What if I told you there's a book from the 15th century filled with plants that don't exist and a language no one can read? For centuries, scholars have tried to crack the Voynich Manuscript, a baffling enigma that defies all understanding. Join us as we dive into the relentless pursuit of decoding history's most persistent linguistic mystery.
In a quiet corner of a dimly lit library, the Voynich Manuscript sits under protective glass, its pages filled with looping characters, strange plants, astronomical wheels, and bathing women that no scholar has ever fully understood. It has survived centuries of war, displacement, ownership changes, and countless attempts at decipherment, yet it remains defiantly silent, as though guarding a long-forgotten world. The mystery surrounding the manuscript begins not with its content, but with its profound resistance to interpretation. Every symbol appears intentional, every illustration deliberate, and yet none correspond to any known language, culture, or scientific tradition. From the moment modern scholars laid eyes on it, they knew they were dealing with something extraordinarily unusual, perhaps even unique in human history. This script delves into the relentless pursuit of unlocking that mystery, following the arc of researchers, cryptologists, historians, and dreamers who have tried to give voice to the enigmatic pages. The story truly begins in 1912, when rare book dealer Wilfrid Voynich discovered the manuscript among a collection of volumes from a Jesuit college in Italy. Its vellum pages were remarkably well preserved, suggesting careful handling over centuries. Voynich immediately sensed he had found something that could rewrite parts of medieval history. He believed it was the scientific notebook of an unknown genius or polymath, perhaps even the work of Roger Bacon, the 13th century Franciscan friar known for his experiments in optics and alchemy. Although his theory was later disproven, Voynich's excitement ignited the academic world, drawing linguists, codebreakers, and historians who longed to be the first to decode a lost language. The manuscript's strange drawings fueled speculation even further. Some botanists insisted the plants resembled known species distorted by the imagination, while others said they matched no flora on Earth. Astronomers marveled at the crescent moons and radiating stars, though none aligned perfectly with any known medieval cosmology. The mysterious women bathing in green pools sparked debates about alchemy, fertility rituals, or even forgotten medical practices. The manuscript refused to anchor itself to any single field of study, drifting instead across disciplines as though intentionally challenging every attempt to categorize it. As scholars pored over the manuscript, one undeniable truth emerged. The text behaved like a real language. Statistical analyses revealed repeating word patterns, structural consistency, and positional rules akin to natural linguistics. Unlike simple ciphers, which tend to produce randomized sequences devoid of linguistic rhythm, the Voynich script flows with almost poetic regularity. It suggested grammar, syntax, and meaning, yet no one could read a single word. Cryptographers from both world wars attempted to unlock it, especially those who had mastered enemy codes and sophisticated encryption methods. Some thought they found patterns, yet every promising trail ended abruptly in contradiction. Even the brilliant minds of Bletchley Park, who cracked the formidable Enigma code, admitted defeat. Such failures only deepened the mystique of the manuscript. How could a manuscript written centuries before modern cryptography withstand the scrutiny of experts who conquered the most advanced wartime ciphers?
Radiocarbon testing eventually placed the manuscript's creation in the early 15th century, around the time of the European Renaissance. This revelation pushed aside earlier theories about medieval monks or secret orders. It hinted at an author who lived during a period of radical change when science, art, and exploration flourished. Yet it also raised new questions. Why would someone in the Renaissance invent an entirely new writing system? What purpose could such a text serve if no one else could read it? Some proposed that it documented esoteric knowledge meant only for a select group. Others believed it was encoded to protect dangerous scientific discoveries. A few skeptics suggested it might be an elaborate hoax, though the complexity in linguistic coherence made this increasingly unlikely. Hoaxes rarely sustain internal logic across hundreds of pages, nor do they maintain consistent patterns that mimic natural language. One of the most compelling chapters in the manuscript's modern history unfolded when codebreaker William Friedman began studying it. Friedman, who led efforts to crack enemy codes in World War II, was widely regarded as one of the greatest cryptologists of his time. He approached the manuscript with both optimism and scientific rigor. His team attempted various decryption techniques, including frequency analysis, transposition theories, and polyalphabetic ciphers. Despite his unmatched experience, Friedman ultimately concluded the manuscript represented an unknown natural language written in an unfamiliar script. His admission of defeat was powerful, not because he failed, but because it affirmed the authenticity and complexity of the manuscript. If it was a hoax, it was a masterful one. If it was a language, it was unlike anything humanity had ever known. Meanwhile, linguists explored the possibility of a constructed language, similar to later creations like Esperanto or Tolkien's Elvish. Such a language might have been crafted for philosophical or artistic reasons, though no evidence survived to confirm this. Some researchers noticed similarities to Asian scripts, though no direct matches were found. Others speculated the manuscript was the work of a secret society communicating in a private code. As digital tools evolved, researchers gained new ways to analyze the manuscript. Machine learning algorithms attempted to detect hidden structures or linguistic families. Some models suggested similarities to certain Asian languages, while others found parallels with Semitic patterns. Once again, nothing conclusive emerged. The more technology advanced, the more the manuscript seemed to slip through humanity's grasp, as though part of it existed just beyond the reach of human reasoning. The illustrations offered another gateway to understanding. The botanical section, filled with bizarre yet detailed drawings of plants, appeared functional rather than symbolic. Many pages resemble herbal manuals used for medicinal purposes, but none corresponded directly to known species. This paradox led to theories that the plants were hybrids, symbolic representations, or lost species. The astronomical diagrams filled with stars and mysterious celestial wheels spark speculation about astrology, forgotten cosmologies, or even allegorical navigation. Scholars noticed repeated lunar motifs, suggesting rituals or calendars. The most peculiar illustrations were the hundreds of nude women bathing in interconnected pools. Some interpreted these as alchemical processes, while others believed they portrayed medieval medical practices related to women's health. None of the interpretations fully aligned with known medieval texts, leaving researchers to wonder whether the manuscript described an undocumented scientific tradition.
In recent decades, interdisciplinary research became central to Voynich studies. Historians collaborated with computer scientists, linguists with botanists, and cryptographers with medievalists. One breakthrough came from analyzing the vellum, inks, and pigments, revealing they were consistent with 15th century European materials. This dispelled theories of modern forgery. Another breakthrough came from high-resolution digital imaging, which revealed faint guidelines, erased strokes, and accidental marks made by the original writer. These details suggested the handwriting was natural and fluid, not artificially constructed. The author wrote with confidence, as though transcribing a language they knew intimately. This deepened an enduring mystery. Somewhere in the 15th century, at least one person could read this language, yet today, not a single human can. The psychological impact of the manuscript cannot be overlooked. Scholars sometimes describe feeling pulled into a labyrinth, unable to escape the sense that meaning lies just out of reach. Others report frustration, spending years on promising theories only to see them collapse. Some attribute this to the human brain's natural tendency to seek patterns even where none exist. The manuscript preys on this instinct, presenting repeating symbols, structured paragraphs, and intricate illustrations that beckon interpretation yet remain sealed. The human desire to solve mysteries fuels endless attempts, but the Voynich manuscript seems crafted to resist closure. Its puzzle-like nature forms a narrative of its own, turning anyone who studies it into a character within its centuries-long story.
As the decades progressed, the Voynich manuscript continued to shift its identity in the eyes of researchers, transforming from a linguistic puzzle into a historical enigma with far-reaching implications. While early scholars believed the manuscript contained scientific observations, later thinkers considered it a map of forgotten knowledge, or even an attempt by a lone medieval scholar to encode personal experiments. Yet, despite the wide spectrum of theories, the manuscript retained a singular originality, as though it belonged not to Europe, Asia, or any known tradition, but to a parallel intellectual universe. The more researchers studied its pages, the clearer it became that no single discipline could hope to unravel it alone. The manuscript resisted confinement, demanding instead a fusion of expertise as diverse as the contents it contained. The story of decoding it became a story of human collaboration and ambition, echoing the broader journey of scientific discovery across centuries. One of the earliest turning points in the modern era came when researchers began questioning not what the manuscript meant, but why it was written in the first place. This shift led to theories that the book might not have been intended as a readable text in the conventional sense. Some proposed that the manuscript served as a memory aid for someone who already knew the content, similar to mnemonic systems used by medieval scholars. Others speculated it was a private notebook, written by an herbalist, physician, or alchemist who encoded it simply to prevent ideas from being stolen or misused. The notion that the manuscript might represent deeply personal knowledge resonated with many, who saw the inconsistency of illustrations as evidence of an individual rather than institutional origin. The manuscript's creator might have been a solitary thinker, a visionary mind working beyond the boundaries of contemporary science. The more scholars imagined the author's identity, the more they found themselves drawn emotionally into the text, blurring the lines between scientific inquiry and personal fascination. As new imaging technologies emerged, they revealed fresh layers of complexity beneath the manuscript's visible surface. Multispectral scanning exposed faint guidelines and corrections that had long escaped notice. These subtle traces showed that the manuscript was not hastily assembled, but meticulously crafted with careful planning. The text followed invisible margins, and certain botanical drawings had undersketches, suggesting the illustrator consciously refined each image. Such evidence undermined the idea of random invention or fraud. Forgers rarely invest time in constructing structural frameworks beneath their drawings, especially ones imperceptible to the naked eye. Instead, the manuscript appeared to be the work of someone devoted to both clarity and aesthetics, someone who believed the information deserved refinement, even if the intended audience was small or select. These revelations heighten the sense that the manuscript recorded a genuine system of knowledge, even if humanity had lost the key to interpreting it.
Another breakthrough emerged when researchers examined the manuscript's binding, stitching, and quire arrangement. They noticed that the book had been rebound at least once, possibly more. Some pages were out of order, while others had been removed or misplaced long before Voynich discovered the book. This suggested that the manuscript didn't merely survive through the centuries, but endured periods of chaos, during which parts of it may have been lost or restructured. The missing pages fueled speculation about whether they contained the key to deciphering the rest. The possibility that the manuscript originally included a glossary, index, or introductory section, a Rosetta Stone that vanished before modern scholars ever laid eyes on it, added layers of tragedy to the story. It raised the question of how close early readers might have been to understanding it, and how much knowledge had slipped permanently out of human reach due to the fragility of historical transmission. As researchers investigated the possibility of lost pages, attention turned to the manuscript's illustrations, which seemed to follow thematic cycles. The botanical section featured unparalleled flora that blended realistic and imaginary shapes, suggesting the author understood plant morphology but perhaps encoded hybrid species or symbolic concepts. The astronomical diagrams revealed not only stars and moons, but zodiac-like sequences, yet none matched known medieval traditions. The enigmatic balneological section, filled with bathing women in intricate plumbing-like structures, baffled experts.
Some believe these scenes depicted a lost medical system, perhaps rooted in hydrotherapy or early physiology. Others interpreted them as allegories of spiritual purification or metaphors for alchemical transformation. The uncertainty surrounding these images highlighted how differently medieval thinkers might have conceptualized knowledge. The manuscript might represent a worldview whose foundations were fundamentally unlike modern frameworks, making translation not just difficult, but conceptually alien. During the 20th century, mathematicians entered the fray, applying statistical methods to study the text's structure. They discovered that the distribution of words resembled the linguistic patterns of natural languages. Certain glyphs appeared more frequently than others, forming clusters that echoed phonetic or grammatical rules. Yet the language remained stubbornly unfamiliar. Some researchers proposed that the text was written in a highly artificial yet functional language, one designed to express ideas with precision unavailable in natural tongues. If true, the manuscript might represent one of the earliest known constructed languages, predating modern inventions by centuries. This idea reshaped the way scholars perceived the manuscript. Instead of being a relic of the past, it could be an astonishingly forward-thinking intellectual experiment, a linguistic innovation ahead of its time. The notion intrigued linguists, who saw in the manuscript a potential window into the mind of an inventor who broke free from existing traditions to create something new.
But the manuscript did not yield easily to such interpretations. For every promising idea, counter-arguments arose. If the manuscript was a constructed language, why was there no historical record of its creator or users? Constructed languages rarely emerge in isolation. They tend to accompany philosophical or religious movements, yet no such context existed. If it was a natural language, why did it vanish without trace? Even minority languages leave archaeological footprints, inscriptions, or mentions in other texts. The Voynich manuscript stood alone, unattached to any lineage. The manuscript's stubborn uniqueness became both its allure and its greatest challenge, pushing researchers to question the limits of linguistic classification. In the digital age, machine learning brought new hope. Researchers trained neural networks to detect similarities between the Voynich text and thousands of languages. The results were tantalizing but inconclusive. Some algorithms suggested faint resemblances to Sino-Tibetan languages, while others detected structural similarities to Semitic scripts. Yet each hypothesis crumbled under scrutiny, failing to account for inconsistencies in grammar, vocabulary, or morphology. Artificial intelligence, for all its power, could not decipher the manuscript the way it solved other historical ciphers. It became clear that the manuscript might require not just pattern recognition, but also contextual understanding, something machines still struggle to replicate. The failure of AI heightened the mystique of the manuscript, reinforcing the possibility that the text encoded something so rare or conceptually distinct that modern tools were ill-equipped to process it. While technological approaches surged, historians returned to examining the manuscript's provenance. They traced its owners through the centuries, uncovering fragments of correspondence that hinted at its reputation among scholars long before Voynich acquired it. A letter from the 17th century mentioned an unknowable book that baffled the emperor's alchemists. Another document hinted at a physician who claimed it contained medical formulas. Such accounts painted a picture of a manuscript that confounded each generation just as thoroughly as the present one. It was not merely a modern puzzle, but a historical constant, a text that defied understanding regardless of era. This continuity of confusion suggested that the manuscript's obscurity was not the result of lost knowledge, but was inherent to its design. The author may have intended it to be accessible only to select individuals or specialized initiates. This idea evoked comparisons with esoteric societies, mystical traditions, and secret manuscripts that circulated among elite circles in medieval Europe. The Voynich manuscript could have been part of a hidden intellectual lineage, one that left few traces outside the cryptic book itself. Speculation about the author intensified as scholars analyzed handwriting styles, ink composition, and textual flow. The writing appeared consistent throughout, suggesting a single author rather than multiple contributors. This stood in contrast to many medieval manuscripts, which were often collaborative works. The notion of a solitary creator added a psychological dimension to the mystery. Who was this person who devoted years, perhaps decades, to producing a manuscript of such detail and complexity? Were they a scientist ahead of their time, an alchemist guarding secrets, a philosopher creating a symbolic universe, or someone whose worldview differed so radically from contemporaries that their ideas became unintelligible to everyone else? The manuscript's existence became a testament to human individuality, one mind expressing itself in a form that could not be fully transmitted across time. This haunting idea shaped the narrative of the manuscript as a monument to intellectual isolation and creativity. The illustrations offered further clues about the author's knowledge and intentions. Many drawings featured carefully rendered roots, leaves, and stems, suggesting that the illustrator had studied plants closely, perhaps even cultivated them. Yet, the plants did not match known species, leaving botanists divided. Some suggested that the plants were composite structures designed to illustrate medical principles rather than real flora. Others believed they were drawn from memory or imagination, reflecting symbolic associations rather than physical reality. The astronomical diagrams deepened the enigma, combining familiar celestial shapes with unknown patterns. Some researchers argued that the diagrams mapped astrological cycles unique to a specific cultural tradition, while others proposed they represented a conceptual model of the universe based on lost philosophical systems. The bathing women section, with its maze-like pipes and interconnected pools, baffled medical historians. Some saw metaphors for bodily processes, others imagined therapeutic practices, and a few proposed the section described a cosmological system where the human body mirrored the structure of the universe. None of these interpretations fully satisfied the complexity of the imagery, highlighting how deeply the manuscript resisted singular explanations. The cultural implications of the manuscript became more profound as scholars realized how much it challenged assumptions about medieval knowledge. The book did not fit neatly into any known scientific, medical, or philosophical tradition. Instead, it suggested the existence of an independent intellectual ecosystem, perhaps one that flourished briefly before disappearing. This possibility reshaped the manuscript's significance. If it represented a lost school of thought, then decoding it might reveal insights into human creativity, forgotten sciences, or alternative worldviews. Such potential made the manuscript larger than a simple puzzle. It became a key to imagining the diversity of knowledge that once existed but left little trace in surviving records. It encouraged historians to rethink how many intellectual traditions may have vanished due to war, suppression, or the fragility of written media. The Voynich Manuscript stood as a symbol of those lost worlds, a single surviving artifact from a lineage wiped clean from history.
As modern researchers wrestled with these implications, some began exploring the possibility that the manuscript encoded knowledge not meant for literal interpretation. Perhaps the text communicated symbolic principles, philosophical reflections, or metaphysical concepts rather than empirical observations. Medieval thinkers often blended science with mysticism, viewing the physical and spiritual realms as interconnected. The manuscript could represent such a synthesis, a worldview incomprehensible to modern minds conditioned to separate science from symbolism. If this were true, deciphering the manuscript would require not only linguistic analysis, but an expansion of conceptual frameworks, a willingness to think as its author did. This idea cast the manuscript as a bridge between worlds, connecting modern rationality with ancient holistic perspectives. Yet, the manuscript's greatest power lay not in any single theory, but in its ability to inspire endless inquiry. The more scholars studied it, the more they realized that the mystery shaped their methodologies, pushing them to question assumptions, adopt interdisciplinary approaches, and confront the limitations of modern knowledge. The manuscript became a mirror, reflecting humanity's intellectual strengths and weaknesses. It revealed how easily scholars could be misled by patterns, how readily theories formed around fragments, and how difficult it was to acknowledge ambiguity. At the same time, it demonstrated the power of curiosity, the resilience of human inquiry, and the depth of imagination. As researchers continued their quest, the manuscript stood as an unbroken enigma, a text waiting patiently for someone, someday, to unlock its tightly guarded secrets. As the 21st century unfolded, the Voynich Manuscript transformed from an obscure medieval curiosity into a global cultural phenomenon. Digital scans made it accessible to millions, and online communities began dissecting each glyph, each illustration, and each peculiar detail with unprecedented collaboration. What had once been the domain of elite scholars was now a playground for enthusiasts, programmers, botanists, amateur linguists, and conspiracy theorists alike. This democratization of research brought both clarity and chaos. On one hand, new insights emerged from fresh perspectives. On the other, an overwhelming tide of speculative theories clouded serious academic efforts. Yet this mass fascination underscored a deeper truth. The manuscript had captured the collective imagination of humanity. Its mystery was no longer just an academic problem, it had become a symbol of the unknown, a reminder of how much remains beyond the reach of modern understanding. One of the most promising developments came from the field of computational linguistics. Researchers used deep learning models to analyze the manuscript's text at a scale no human could match. They discovered patterns that hinted at underlying rules, not random sequences, but structured linguistic behavior. Certain words clustered around specific themes in the illustrations, suggesting a semantic relationship. For example, words repeated frequently near botanical drawings, but rarely near astronomical diagrams, hinting at topic-based vocabulary. Sentence length patterns resembled those of natural languages, though with unusual variations that defied classification. These findings fueled the idea that the manuscript encoded a functional language, perhaps one crafted for a specific purpose or community. Yet machine learning could not decode the script, it could only describe its patterns. The ultimate key still eluded researchers, as though the final interpretation required human intuition capable of bridging logic and imagination. While AI offered hope, new controversies emerged around supposed decipherments. Several researchers claimed to have cracked the manuscript entirely, often generating sensational headlines. Some insisted it described medical remedies. Others said it was an encoded romance, a women's health guide, or a compendium of mystical lore. But each claim eventually collapsed under scrutiny, revealed as selective interpretations, flawed translations, or overly optimistic assumptions. This pattern became familiar. A researcher would propose a solution, publish with confidence, gather brief attention, and then fade into the long list of failed attempts. This cycle reinforced a humbling reality. The Voynich Manuscript demanded extraordinary rigor, and any theory that could not withstand interdisciplinary evaluation was destined to crumble. Yet these failed decipherments served a purpose. They forced scholars to refine their methods, question biases, and develop more comprehensive frameworks for understanding the text.
One particularly influential idea emerged from semiotic theory, which proposed that the manuscript might operate on multiple levels of meaning. Medieval thinkers often used layered communication: literal, symbolic, allegorical, and mystical. If the Voynich text employed similar layers, it might encode concepts that cannot be captured through direct translation. The plants, stars, and bathing figures could function as visual metaphors, guiding readers toward philosophical or cosmological truths. In this view, the text might express relationships rather than literal descriptions, using a language designed to represent structures of thought rather than objects. Such an interpretation placed the manuscript closer to a diagrammatic system, a precursor to symbolic logic or conceptual mapping. This idea appealed to philosophers and historians who saw in the manuscript hints of an intellectual lineage that diverged sharply from mainstream European traditions. Parallel to these conceptual studies, scientific analyses continued to shed light on the manuscript's material composition. Researchers used advanced spectroscopy to study pigments,
revealing that the colors derived from common medieval sources: copper-based greens, carbon blacks, iron gall inks, and plant-based yellows. Nothing suggested exotic origins. This led some to argue that the manuscript was the work of an ordinary medieval scribe with extraordinary ambition. Yet the precision of the illustrations, combined with the consistency of the script, indicated a level of expertise uncommon among average scribes. The author likely had access to tools and knowledge associated with scholarly environments, monasteries, medical schools, or court libraries. This placed the manuscript within the intellectual landscape of 15th century Europe, though its contents remained unmoored from any known tradition. The botanical section continued to pose one of the greatest challenges. Botanists identified structural details that hinted at real-world plant families: leaves resembling legumes, roots shaped like members of the Astra family, flowers reminiscent of Mediterranean herbs. Yet none matched perfectly. This led to theories that the plants were composites, constructed to illustrate principles rather than specific species. For instance, a drawing might combine the root system of one plant with the leaves of another to explain medicinal interactions. Such composite illustrations existed in medieval herbals, where artists sometimes merged features to represent generalized plant types. If the manuscript followed this tradition, then the botanical drawings might serve as visual mnemonics for an herbalist trained in a particular school. The challenge was that no known tradition matched the Voynich style, suggesting the existence of a parallel or independent herbal knowledge system.
As research intensified, attention shifted toward the enigmatic bathing women and interconnected pipes in the balneological section. Medical historians proposed that the scenes represented hydrotherapy practices, common in medieval Europe, where natural springs in baths served therapeutic functions. The green pools could symbolize mineral waters, and the pipes might illustrate how fluids moved within the body according to humoral theory. Others argue that the diagrams represented anatomical metaphors, with the pools symbolizing organs and the connecting pipes representing physiological pathways. This interpretation aligned with medieval texts that depicted the human body as a system of channels influenced by astral forces. The presence of stars and zodiac symbols in adjacent sections lent credibility to the idea of an integrated medical cosmological system. In this reading, the manuscript could be a comprehensive health manual rooted in a worldview that unified astrology, physiology, and herbalism. Still, other scholars saw the balneological imagery as spiritual allegory. Medieval mystics frequently used female figures to represent transformative states of the soul, and water served as a symbol of purification and rebirth. The manuscript's bathing women might embody metaphysical processes, depicting the soul's journey through cycles of purification. The interconnected pipes could symbolize the flow of divine energy or cosmic influence. While such interpretations leaned heavily into symbolism, they resonated with the manuscript's visual richness and conceptual ambiguity. Whether literal, figurative, or both, the bathing scenes remained central to understanding the manuscript's purpose and worldview. The astronomical and cosmological sections offered additional insights into the author's mindset. The presence of stars, moons, and circular diagrams suggested an interest in celestial patterns. Yet the diagrams did not correspond directly to known medieval astronomical models. Some researchers proposed that the manuscript depicted a unique cosmology, one blending scientific observation with astrological interpretation. One diagram featured rosette-like wheels connected by passages, resembling a map of celestial spheres or metaphysical realms. Some compared it to mystical texts that describe the journey of souls through cosmic layers. Others saw in it the map of a conceptual universe, based on relationships rather than physical distances. The author's intention remained opaque, but the diagrams clearly reflected a sophisticated mind contemplating the structure of existence.
Throughout its modern history, the manuscript repeatedly challenged assumptions about authorship. The consistent handwriting suggested a single author, yet the variety of illustrations indicated mastery across disciplines: botany, astronomy, medicine, and art. This raised questions about whether the author was truly a single individual or a polymath of extraordinary ability. Medieval Europe produced several such figures, but none left a body of work resembling the Voynich manuscript. It remained possible that the author was a peripheral thinker, someone whose contributions were overshadowed by more prominent intellectual traditions. If so, the manuscript might be the sole surviving testimony of an otherwise forgotten genius. As researchers contemplated the manuscript's intellectual origins, they also considered its social context. Why was such a book created? Who was it meant for? One theory suggested that it served as a teaching manual for an esoteric school, with the encoded script ensuring that only initiates could access its knowledge. Another posited that it was a personal journal of experimentation, encoded to protect proprietary medical or alchemical techniques. A third proposed that the manuscript was intended as a gift or even a challenge to a wealthy patron, demonstrating the author's ingenuity. The presence of zodiac symbols and the emphasis on cycles hinting at ritualistic or ceremonial uses. Yet none of these theories provided definitive answers. The manuscript's ambiguity seemed intentional, as though the author wanted to obscure meaning behind layers of linguistic and visual puzzles. Despite the persistent uncertainty, the manuscript had a profound impact on modern scholarship. It inspired researchers to push the boundaries of cryptography, linguistics, and interdisciplinary analysis. It challenged the assumption that all medieval knowledge fit neatly into known categories. It encouraged humility among scholars who realized that some aspects of human creativity remain inaccessible across time. Its resistance to interpretation became part of its identity, not a failure of scholarship, but a testament to the depth of human imagination. The manuscript illustrated that knowledge could be encoded in forms that transcend linguistic and cultural boundaries, leaving behind artifacts that future generations might never fully comprehend. In recent years, a philosophical perspective gained traction. Perhaps the true significance of the Voynich manuscript lies not in what it says, but in what it represents. It stands as a symbol of human curiosity, a puzzle that compels each generation to question its assumptions and push intellectual limits. It reminds us that the past is vast and mysterious, filled with ideas and worldviews that may never be reconstructed. It challenges modern arrogance by showing that not all knowledge is accessible or interpretable through contemporary methodologies. In this sense, the manuscript becomes less a problem to be solved and more a mirror reflecting humanity's pursuit of meaning. Its beauty lies in its refusal to surrender its secrets, inviting endless exploration.
As we look upon the manuscript today, digitally scanned, analyzed by supercomputers, debated by scholars across the globe, it remains unchanged, silent, and enigmatic. Its pages hold the traces of a mind that reached across time, seeking to communicate something profound, intricate, or deeply personal. Whether it encodes scientific knowledge, mystical wisdom, or a conceptual language known only to its creator, the manuscript continues to inspire wonder. The pursuit of its meaning has become a story in itself, one that spans centuries and unites diverse fields of study. In the end, the Voynich manuscript stands as a testament to the boundless creativity of the human mind. Even if its secrets are never unlocked, the journey of exploring them enriches our understanding of language, symbolism, and the fragile threads that connect us to the past. Its mystery endures not because it resists solution, but because it beckons us to imagine worlds beyond our comprehension. Perhaps that is its greatest message, that the unknown is not something to fear, but to explore. That mystery itself is a vital part of the human experience. And as long as the manuscript exists, resting quietly in its protective case, scholars and dreamers alike will continue to lean closer, searching its strange symbols for a glimpse of the lost voice that once shaped them. An invitation across time, waiting patiently for someone who can finally listen.